Can a slight deviation in tire temperature destroy an entire qualifying lap? What if I told you that that was precisely what ruined Oscar Piastri's season and that it took McLaren almost a year to discover it? When reviewing the telemetry in detail, they detected a deviation in the car's aerodynamic response in slow and medium corners. It was not something obvious to the naked eye. There was no break or obvious anomaly. It was a sum of small factors that, combined, generated a structural imbalance in the behavior of the car when changing direction. What seemed like a simple lack of confidence from Piastri in certain sectors of the circuit turned into an alarming technical revelation. The MCL39 had a blind spot, a defect that only manifested itself in very specific conditions, when the car entered right-angle curves at low speed with soft tires and a low fuel load. Exactly the scenario of a qualifying lap. McLaren discovered that at certain times the warm-up process, specifically the transition from the garage to the first lap launched, had a micro-variation in the internal temperature of Piastri's tires. We are talking about a difference of just 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. Insignificant for any other motor discipline. But in Formula 1, that margin can be the line that separates a pole position from a place outside the top 10. This finding uncovered a perfect storm of factors. The thermal blankets, which are supposed to prepare the tires to go out on the track in optimal condition, were not providing a uniform temperature. And this was not a factory fault. It was a combination of exposure time, atmospheric pressure, asphalt conditions, and even minute details such as the exact time between leaving the garage and activating the DRS. Inflation pressure management also played a crucial role. In theory, both of Piastri's front wheels were supposed to have the exact same pressure, but engineers discovered that small fluctuations were being generated due to how the driver braked on his exit lap. A couple of brakes more abrupt than necessary, and the internal pressure varied just enough to alter the contact surface of the tire with the asphalt. Result: less initial grip and loss of confidence in the first sector. The most dramatic thing about all this is that, in basic telemetry, the car seemed fine. The speed, braking, and acceleration lines were within standard parameters. Only by doing a complete overlay with Norris's lap and applying advanced filters on the lateral G load, the vertical load, and the thermal evolution of the tire in each meter of the circuit, was the difference noticed. A difference invisible to the human eye, but brutally decisive for the final result. And here comes a key point. While Norris had a more aggressive driving style in the late braking phases, which helped bring the tires to the optimal point faster, Piastri tended to be more progressive, softer, more technical. And in a car as sensitive as the MCL39, that style difference became a technical handicap. But that wasn't the pilot's fault. It was the system's fault. The McLaren car had been developed under parameters that rewarded aggressiveness and punished finesse. Ironically, what was supposed to be a benefit, having such a refined and advanced car, turned into a double-edged sword. Once engineers understood this in Abu Dhabi, the feeling was one of disbelief. They had been running all season with a critical component completely misunderstood. It wasn't a mechanical problem. It was a thermodynamics problem. Synchronization. Misinterpretation of signs that were there all the time, but that no one knew how to read in time. What McLaren discovered in Abu Dhabi not only exposed a technical flaw. In fact, it exposed a much deeper truth about the very concept of the MCL39. It was a fast car. Extremely fast. Capable of dominating entire sectors of the circuit, setting lap records and facing Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes on almost any track. But that speed was not free. It came with such pronounced structural fragility that, if certain millimeter margins were not respected, performance collapsed. This was the turning point in the technical reading of the car. The MCL39 was no ordinary single-seater. It was a streamlined scalpel. A surgical tool that only worked at its maximum level when everything was perfectly aligned. Temperatures, pressures, balances, roll angles, runway inclination, wind conditions, and even the specific order of changes in the aileron configuration. Everything had to operate in absolute harmony. Andrea Stella's team, obsessed with pushing the limits of design to the maximum, had created a car so advanced that it became unpredictable outside its working window. And that window was alarmingly narrow. A minimal alteration in the distribution of masses, a slight displacement of aerodynamic load between axles, or a small variation in atmospheric pressure, could cause the car to become unstable under braking, unpredictable when cornering, or simply ineffective on exit. The engineers, comparing the data between Norris and Piastri, found something that changed the entire internal perspective. When Lando pushed the car, aggressively applied the brakes, and used the induced oversteer as a tool to turn the car, the MCL39 responded. It was uncomfortable, yes, but he responded. On the other hand, Oscar, who was looking for a more neutral, more balanced, and less dependent on extreme driving, found himself with a car that did not wake up until it was too late. His driving style did not fit the ultra-specific personality of the car. This created an unfair dynamic, because from the outside, the Times suggested that Norris was faster. But in reality, the car was inadvertently designed for a specific driving profile. And that, in modern Formula One, is dangerous, because a car that only performs under a specific interpretation of driving is not a competitive car. It is a conditioned car. The irony is that this sensitive feature also explained why McLaren was unbeatable on certain circuits such as Monaco, Hungary, or Marina Bay, where thermal parameters and track grip could be precisely controlled. Under these conditions, the Woking scalpel cut with millimeter precision. But on tracks like Monza or Silverstone, where the aerodynamic flow is more chaotic and crosswinds alter stability, the car became capricious, unpredictable, unstable. The big problem with 2025 was that this duality was not identified until the end. On paper, McLaren had the better chassis, the best aerodynamic efficiency, the most worked package in terms of development. But in practice, what they had built was a single-seater that required almost surgical precision. And in Formula One, where margins are the size of a tenth of a second, that is not only a risk, it is a sentence. In Abu Dhabi, when Piastri's failed qualifying laps were analyzed, it all made sense. The rear axle floated, not because it was poorly calibrated, but because the car was not within its very narrow comfort zone. And the most shocking thing, this was not exclusive to Oscar. It had also affected Lando on more than one occasion. Although his ability to adapt his driving had put him off during the year, it was there that McLaren understood that its technical masterpiece had a price. It was the fastest car, but also the most delicate. And that delicacy, which was invisible in the wind tunnel and in the simulations, was revealed on the track like a double-edged sword. What McLaren learned in Abu Dhabi was not simply a technical lesson, but a paradigm shift in its design philosophy and strategy. The team, known for its aggressive approach to development, realized that its car was not only a precision machine, but also a machine that could become unpredictable under certain conditions. And that unpredictability, although not visible in the laboratory or in training, was destroying the consistency they needed to fight for the championship. In a sport where margins for error are minimal and strategic decisions are made in fractions of a second, McLaren was faced with a stark reality. Its car, the McLaren, was designed to perform at its best in controlled circumstances, but in moments of maximum pressure, when conditions changed rapidly or when drivers needed to adapt, the car became unwieldy. What it will really mean for 2026 is a redefinition of what McLaren considers the limit in Formula One. The team will have to make its car more predictable and, above all, much more flexible in terms of tolerance for variations. As the level of competition rises, with Red Bull and Ferrari developing their own cars, McLaren cannot afford to continue with the mentality that a car that is fast but responsive is enough. The McLaren must evolve to be more than just a car that holds up when things are going well. It should be a car that can also hold up when things don't go as planned. For McLaren, it will be the year in which the team truly tests its ability to adapt to an even higher level of competition. What happened in Abu Dhabi was not just a technical anecdote, much less a simple footnote in McLaren's season. It was a revelation that resonates strongly at the very heart of what it means to compete at the highest level. Because in modern Formula One, where everything is measured to the millimeter and every decimal counts, discovering an invisible flaw is like finding a crack in an apparently perfect statue. And that crack not only compromises the structure, it redefines everything you thought you knew about it. For Oscar Piastri, this discovery is more than a technical relief. It is a silent redemption. Proof that their performance was not limited by a lack of talent, but by a systemic problem that not even the best engineers could detect in time. For McLaren, it is a warning. The obsession with technical perfection can become a weakness if it is not accompanied by adaptability and deep understanding of the human margins within a machine. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.